Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Silence isn't empty, it's loaded. And in the case of Sigma males, it's armed, encrypted, and set to self-destruct if tampered with. Have you ever tried to figure out a Sigma male, only to feel like you were reading a book written in code, locked in a safe buried 6 feet underground? Yeah, you're not alone. While the world is out here oversharing on timelines, Sigma males treat their thoughts like national secrets, and their lives like a private investigation no one's qualified to run. Here's a fact. Psychology Today once noted that people who value privacy at a deep level often operate with stronger internal locus of control, meaning they're harder to manipulate and even harder to predict. Translation? That quiet Sigma guy isn't just avoiding small talk, he's dodging surveillance. So, what are they hiding? What are these lone wolves protecting so fiercely behind their sealed-off energy, surgical detachment, and "try me, I vanish" vibe? Grab your mental flashlight, because what we're about to uncover isn't just mystery. It's why the most private man in the room is often the most dangerous and the most misjudged. And yes, somewhere in there he might just be hiding snacks too, but mostly he's hiding power, precision, pain, plans, and parts of himself the world was never meant to touch. Let's dive in. Number 1. They've learned the world can't handle raw integrity. Most people don't realize how fragile their comfort zones really are until they run into someone who lives by a truth that doesn't flinch. Sigma males are wired differently. They're not hiding because they're afraid. They're hiding because the world isn't built to handle the kind of raw, uncompromising integrity they carry. We live in a society that rewards politeness over honesty, filters over flaws, and likability over authenticity. The Sigma male doesn't play that game. He doesn't bend his truth to fit anyone's expectations. He doesn't sugarcoat his opinions just to keep the peace, and he definitely doesn't dilute himself to be more digestible. That kind of intensity, it makes people uncomfortable. Not because he's doing anything wrong, but because he's not playing by the unspoken rules everyone else has silently agreed to follow. That's why he keeps things close to his chest. He's learned that people aren't really asking for honesty. They're asking for comfortable lies that make them feel safe. But he can't do that. He doesn't operate with half-truths or pretend niceties. So instead of getting dragged into conversations where he has to edit himself, he chooses silence. Not because he has nothing to say, but because what he would say might scorch the room. His mind doesn't entertain surface-level drama or shallow validation. He thinks in terms of systems, consequences, character, and cost. He watches people sell their souls for likes, fake friendships, or temporary approval. And he wants nothing to do with that kind of transaction. When people sense that level of clarity and control in someone, they react in 2 ways. They either admire it or try to destroy it. There's no middle ground, so the Sigma male hides, not because he's ashamed, but because he's aware. He knows his truth could dismantle someone else's illusion, and he's not in the business of saving people who aren't ready for the mirror. His privacy isn't weakness. It's protection, not of himself, but of everyone else who thinks they want access, until they realize that kind of rawness doesn't comfort. It confronts, and most people aren't built to face the fire without burning. Number 2, they know openness is often a setup for manipulation. They know that in today's world, being open is often a trap dressed as connection. Sigma males have watched people pretend to care just long enough to gather intel, like friendly spies. They've seen how a seemingly innocent "how are you really feeling" turns into gossip fuel, emotional leverage, or a future guilt trip waiting to be unleashed at the worst possible moment, so they don't take the bait. They've learned that for most people, listening isn't about understanding. It's about collecting data they can later twist or weaponize. That's why Sigma males share the bare minimum, not out of paranoia, but from experience. They've already been burned by people who seemed trustworthy until emotions got involved, egos got bruised, or power shifted. And once they realized that many conversations are actually traps disguised as concern, they stopped offering pieces of themselves for free. They know that the more someone knows about your insecurities, your dreams, your past, the easier it is for them to pull strings you didn't even know were visible. So they underexpose themselves on purpose. They're surgical about what they reveal and to whom. You'll never catch them in emotional oversharing marathons, not because they don't feel deeply, but because they understand that emotional transparency is currency, and most people haven't earned the right to spend it. They protect their vulnerabilities not by denying them, but by mastering when and where those vulnerabilities are allowed to breathe. This calculated restraint is often mistaken for coldness, but it's actually high-level self-defense. Sigma males refuse to hand others the bullets that could one day be used against them, because they've seen it before. How a joke becomes a jab, how a confession becomes a weapon, how a shared moment becomes a point of control. They don't assume everyone's out to get them, but they also don't gamble their inner world on the possibility that someone might be genuine. They'd rather say less and be safe than speak too freely and regret it. Number 3, they're not hiding secrets. They're protecting power. Sigma males aren't hiding secrets because they have something to be ashamed of. They're hiding power because they know how quickly power gets exploited. In a world obsessed with exposure and oversharing, they understand that the more people know about you, the more they can control, manipulate, or copy you. Privacy for them isn't some passive shield. It's a deliberate, strategic weapon. They treat their inner world like confidential intel, not because they're paranoid, but because they've seen how information gets twisted the moment it's out in the open. People love to preach transparency, but they forget that transparency is only safe in a trustworthy environment. Sigma males don't trust the environment, not because they're cynical, but because they're observant. They've watched how easily honesty can become leverage, how personal details become pressure points, and how motives get misinterpreted and thrown back like darts. So instead of leaving their identity up for public interpretation, they keep it locked away, disclosed only to those who've earned more than just a smile or a title. They're not mysterious for the sake of being mysterious. They're private because they've weaponized their silence. Every detail they don't give out is one less opportunity for someone to misread them, imitate them, or interfere with their path. They don't crave validation or recognition from outsiders, so they don't feel the need to explain themselves. That's power. Quiet, controlled, and absolutely unshakable. Sigma males also understand that when people know too much about you, they start building psychological blueprints, trying to predict your moves, sabotage your plans, or mold you into something more manageable. That's exactly what they avoid. By keeping people in the dark, they maintain the upper hand. Their privacy isn't hiding weakness, it's guarding strength. It's protecting the parts of them that fuel their vision, drive their discipline, and hold their edge. So when people complain that a Sigma male is too private, what they're really frustrated about is this: they can't access him, and they can't control him. And that's the entire point. Number 4, they don't share because they don't need emotional echoes. Most people talk to be heard, not understood. They vent, overshare, and spill emotions just to feel lighter, hoping someone will echo back reassurance, sympathy, or applause. But Sigma males don't need that echo. They don't throw their emotions into the world looking for comfort or permission to feel what they feel. They process internally, privately, with surgical precision. That's not emotional coldness. It's emotional mastery. They're not wired to outsource their pain, joy, anger, or fear to the nearest listener. They're wired to face it head-on, alone, in silence. When something breaks inside them, they don't go hunting for pity or applause. They go inward, study the wreckage, rebuild the foundation, and upgrade their mental architecture. That's their pattern. Pain isn't something to post about. It's something to mine for wisdom. Loneliness isn't a crisis, it's a workspace, and struggle isn't something they try to escape, it's something they sharpen themselves against. Most people can't sit with themselves long enough to heal without noise. Sigma males thrive in that space. They don't require emotional feedback loops to feel stable. They don't need someone to say, "I understand," for them to understand themselves. They've built an internal system where their emotional regulation isn't tied to outside approval or external input. That makes them dangerous, not because they lack feeling, but because they've removed the need for audience participation. So when people say, "He's so private, he never opens up," what they're really saying is, He doesn't need me the way I need others. And that's true. He doesn't vent to feel better. He doesn't need a round of applause for surviving something hard. He doesn't want someone else to carry the weight of his emotional world, because carrying it himself is part of what makes him strong. That kind of emotional self-sufficiency intimidates people. It exposes how dependent most are on being seen, heard, and validated. Sigma males don't need mirrors. They already know who they are, and they're not looking for you to confirm it. Number 5. They've been betrayed by curiosity dressed as care. Sigma males aren't naturally paranoid. They're trained by experience. They've learned, sometimes painfully, that not everyone who asks, "Are you okay?" actually cares. Sometimes it's curiosity in disguise. Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's ammunition gathering. Whatever it is, it taught them one thing: vulnerability can be dangerous when handed to the wrong hands. They've sat across from people who seemed warm, who wore empathy like a costume, who leaned in close and said, "You can trust me." And then later, those same people weaponized what was shared. A private fear becomes a joke. A personal story becomes gossip. A moment of raw truth becomes a bargaining chip or a guilt trip. That betrayal doesn't just sting, it rewires their entire view of emotional exposure. So they stopped sharing, not because they became cold, but because they woke up. They realized that sincerity is rare, and most people don't ask to understand. They ask to store. Store your weaknesses, store your patterns, store your soft spots. And when the friendship cracks, the relationship ends, or the agenda changes, those stored pieces get used like darts. Now, even when someone seems genuine, the Sigma male's radar is scanning for hidden motives. Is this care, or is it curiosity? Is this compassion or control? That's why they come off guarded, even when the environment feels safe to others. For them, safety isn't about tone, it's about patterns. And they've seen too many nice voices turn sharp. They treat vulnerability like a high-risk zone. Not because they are incapable of opening up, but because they've seen how quickly openness can be turned into exposure. They don't romanticize honesty anymore. They calculate it strategically, selectively. If you're lucky enough to hear what's really going on in their head or heart, understand this. It didn't come casually. It came with trust that took years to earn and seconds to lose. So the next time a Sigma male deflects a personal question or stays silent when you press in emotionally, don't take it as rejection. Take it as proof. He's been burned before, and he refuses to hand someone else the match. Number 6. They don't speak until the words serve a purpose. Sigma males don't believe in wasting words. If they're quiet, it's not because they're shy, awkward, or unsure. It's because they're calculating. Every word they choose to speak has weight, and every word they withhold has purpose. They don't blurt, ramble, or talk just to make things less awkward. In fact, they're perfectly comfortable with silence. More than that, they prefer it, because silence lets them observe, process, and maintain control. You'll never catch a Sigma male talking just to be liked. He doesn't drop opinions just to fit in, and he doesn't flatter to score points. If he says something, it's because there's a reason, a message to deliver, a truth to reveal, or a situation that needs shifting. Small talk doesn't interest him. Surface-level chatter feels like static. He'd rather sit in complete silence than participate in meaningless noise. To most people, that silence feels uncomfortable. They misread it as distance, disinterest, or arrogance. But they're wrong. His silence isn't passive, it's intentional. It's like a vault with selective access. He's not hiding emptiness, he's protecting depth. He knows that once words leave his mouth, they can't be taken back. And in a world where people talk just to prove they exist, his restraint makes him dangerous, because he's not broadcasting for attention, he's storing power. When a Sigma male does speak, people listen. Not because he's loud, but because he's rare. His words come sharpened, thought out, and often loaded with deeper meaning. He might say 10 words where others say 100, but those 10 hit harder than most monologues. People walk away remembering what he said, not because he shouted, but because he meant it. He understands something most people don't. Words are currency, and he doesn't throw his around carelessly. So if a Sigma male is speaking to you, understand the weight of it. It means the moment mattered. It means the words were earned. And it means the silence before it wasn't absence. It was preparation. Number 7. Their pain has been turned into a private operating system. Sigma males don't heal like everyone else. They don't announce their heartbreak, cry out loud for sympathy, or document their struggles in real time. When something breaks them, they disappear, not to sulk, but to reprogram. They treat pain the way an engineer treats a faulty system, not with drama, but with analysis. They strip it down to its core, examine the failure, and rebuild something stronger, something smarter. And they do it alone. That's why their privacy is so sacred. It's not about secrecy for the sake of looking mysterious. It's about protecting the very lab where they turn trauma into structure, loss into discipline, betrayal into strategy. What the world sees as emotional distance is actually the product of intense internal work, done silently, without applause, and without anyone holding their hand through it. They didn't share the process because they weren't looking for comfort. They were building new code. They took the hits, rejection, abandonment, heartbreak, failure, and instead of crying out, they coded new rules. Don't depend on promises. Watch actions. Never expose what people haven't earned the right to protect. Pain is information, not identity. These aren't just coping mechanisms, they're operating systems, custom-built from real experiences designed to prevent the same damage from happening again. You won't hear the full story of what hurt them because that story was never meant to be public. It was meant to serve a function, transformation. And now that pain lives on, not as weakness, but as quiet strength. It shows up in their boundaries, in their ability to stay calm under pressure, in their refusal to be emotionally manipulated. Every scar has been absorbed into the machinery of who they are. So when you encounter a Sigma male who seems guarded, detached, or unreadable, understand this. You're not looking at someone who's broken. You're looking at someone who broke and rebuilt himself in private, not to gain pity, not to impress anyone, but to become someone no one could break the same way again. That's why they keep that part hidden. It's not shame. It's sacred ground. Number 8. They speak through action, not narration. Sigma males don't need to explain themselves because what they do is the explanation. They're not the type to sit around narrating their struggles, detailing every setback, or romanticizing the grind. They simply get to work. While others are talking about their big plans or posting progress updates for validation, the Sigma male is quietly stacking bricks, step by step, until there's a damn fortress standing where no one thought one could exist. They don't crave applause for the process. They don't need people to know how hard it was, how many times they failed, or how much they sacrificed to get there. To them, talk is cheap. Everyone talks. Everyone claims they're on the grind, but very few have results that speak for them. Sigma males, they let the finished product scream what they never had to say. You'll never hear a Sigma male bragging about how busy he is. He won't dramatize the late nights, the losses, or the pressure. He doesn't perform struggle. He endures it, quietly. Not because he lacks emotion, but because he understands that the real story isn't in the telling. It's in the transformation. And when people finally see what he's built, what he's become, what he's survived, they'll get it, or they won't. Either way, he doesn't need them to. Their life becomes proof. You won't hear him say, "I'm strong." You'll see it in how he moves under pressure. He won't say, "I'm loyal." You'll notice how he shows up when it matters. He doesn't announce character, he demonstrates it. Every choice, every boundary, every silent decision he makes is a language. If you know how to read it, you'll understand him. If you don't, you were never meant to. That's why so many people misunderstand Sigma males. They keep looking for emotional commentary, for verbal cues, for validation in the form of storytelling. But Sigma males speak in actions. Their victories, their transformations, their growth, it's all there. It's just not narrated. Because for them, the climb doesn't need to be broadcast. The mountain they built is the story. Number 9, they're hiding the depth that would drown others. Most people think Sigma males are quiet because they have nothing to say. But the truth is, they're quiet because they have too much depth, too much insight, too much unfiltered perception of reality. If they ever fully opened up, if they truly laid bare the way they see the world, the way they dissect emotion, truth, manipulation, hypocrisy, and identity, it wouldn't spark connection. It would cause emotional whiplash. Sigma males carry psychological weight most people aren't trained to lift. Their thoughts aren't surface-level reactions. They're layered frameworks built from observing human nature without blinders. They see the agendas behind words, the masks people wear even when they don't realize they're wearing one, the lies people tell themselves just to function. It's not that they don't feel. They do. But their feelings run so deep and collide with so much clarity that speaking them would overwhelm anyone not used to confronting raw truth. They know this. That's why they filter themselves, not out of fear, but out of consideration. Their silence isn't coldness, it's control. Because when someone operates with that much internal voltage, even their honesty becomes high-voltage truth. And most people just aren't ready for that kind of intensity. They want honesty until it exposes their comfort zone. They want depth until it forces them to reevaluate everything they believe. So the Sigma male stays silent. Not because he's disconnected, but because he's containing something. Something big, something sharp, something honest enough to unsettle. And unless someone has proven they can handle that kind of gravity, he won't release it. Not out of superiority, but out of mercy. He's not hiding to be mysterious. He's hiding because he knows that not every mind is equipped to breathe underwater. And if he spoke from the depths he truly lives in, most people would panic, retreat, or worse, try to fix him. That's why you'll never fully know what he's thinking. That's why you'll never hear the whole story. His silence isn't a wall, it's a floodgate, and keeping it closed is often the kindest thing he can do. Number 10. They know people demand access they haven't earned. In today's culture, people expect access to your inner world just because they showed up. They think being around you automatically earns them a backstage pass to your emotions, your past, your plans, your struggles. It's entitlement dressed up as friendship, interest, or connection. But Sigma males don't buy it. They've learned that access isn't a right. It's something you earn through consistency, character, and time. Sigma males don't owe anyone their story, their emotions, or their thoughts just because someone asks. They understand that real intimacy is built, not demanded. So when people try to dig into their private world too quickly, they shut it down, not out of rudeness, but out of principle. They've seen what happens when you let people in too fast. They take more than they should. They misunderstand what they see. Or worse, they use it later when things go south. Their privacy isn't rejection, it's a filter. It's their way of seeing who respects boundaries, who understands patience, and who's just trying to collect emotional currency without investing anything real. Most people are so used to instant access, social media confessions, trauma dumping, oversharing, that when someone doesn't immediately open up, they take offense. But Sigma males don't bend to that pressure. If someone gets frustrated by their privacy, that's the test, and most fail it. They guard their inner world the way some people guard a vault. And it's not because there's something wrong or broken inside, it's because what's in there is valuable. You don't hand a stranger the keys to your house. Why would you hand them the keys to your soul? People call them mysterious, closed off, emotionally unavailable. But that's just what entitlement sounds like when it hits a wall it can't climb. The truth is, Sigma males are more open than anyone once you've earned it. But until then, their privacy stands. It's not arrogance, it's discipline. And it's how they protect their peace from people who confuse access with entitlement and curiosity with connection. Number 11. They're hiding their next move because it's meant to shock. Sigma males don't tease their next move. They don't hint, they don't drop cryptic clues, and they definitely don't look for approval before they act. What they're working on, who they're becoming, isn't up for discussion. It's under wraps because it's meant to hit like a detonation, not a demo. While everyone else is busy showcasing progress to feel relevant, Sigma males are silent in the lab, building something no one sees coming. They know that talking about your plans drains their power. Explaining dilutes momentum. Previewing invites interference. That's why Sigma males keep their evolution airtight. The next version of them isn't something they're crafting to impress, it's something they're designing to disrupt. And if people knew even a fraction of what was coming, they'd either try to stop it, copy it, or get in the way. So they vanish for a while. They grow in shadows, not to hide, but to sharpen. Every step forward is taken in silence. Every transformation happens without applause. Because when they reappear, it's not to ask, "What do you think?" It's to say, "It's done. Deal with it." They don't need the world's input. They need the world to feel the impact. This is why people often misread them. They seem inactive, detached, or stuck. But that's just the surface. What's actually happening is deep, internal work, mental restructuring, emotional recalibration, tactical repositioning. They're not just making a move, they're becoming something unrecognizable to who they were before. And that level of growth doesn't need a trailer. It needs silence. So when they drop the next version of themselves, it doesn't just surprise people. It shakes them. They're not hiding because they're unsure. They're hiding because the moment they reveal it, everything changes. Relationships shift. Power dynamics flip. Weak links fall off. And that's exactly the point. Sigma males aren't evolving for applause, they're evolving for impact. And by the time you realize what they were up to, it'll be too late to prepare. No spoilers, no hints, just shock. Number 12. They're guarding a self that's still in prototype mode. Sigma males know better than to unveil a half-built version of themselves. They're constantly evolving, refining, dismantling, and rebuilding. And that process isn't pretty. It's messy, uncertain, raw, but it's necessary. And because they take that evolution so seriously, they refuse to put it on display until it's solid, battle-tested, and untouchable. They're not hiding themselves from the world. They're protecting the version of themselves that isn't ready for exposure yet. Most people rush to show their progress. They crave validation mid-transformation. They want to be seen even when they're still figuring it out. But Sigma males don't need that. In fact, they know that showing up too soon invites noise, criticism, confusion, unwanted opinions, and even sabotage. The world loves to judge what it doesn't understand and tear apart what isn't finished. So they go quiet. Not because they're lost, but because they're under construction. The thoughts, the habits, the vision, it's all in flux. And while others might need to narrate every step of their self-improvement journey, the Sigma male keeps it locked down. Why? Because he knows how delicate transformation is when it's still in motion. One careless comment, one doubting voice, one insecure onlooker projecting their fear, and suddenly the whole process slows or collapses. That's why their privacy intensifies when they're evolving. You'll feel the distance. You'll notice the withdrawal. Not because they're pulling away from others, but because they're pulling toward themselves. They're not trying to be mysterious. They're being strategic. They're guarding the prototype. The next version of themselves isn't meant to be crowdsourced or critiqued. It's meant to be unleashed when it's ready, undeniable, and untouchable. And when that version finally steps out, it won't come with a warning. There won't be an explanation, no beta test, no sneak peek, just the finished product, stronger, sharper, and beyond reach. That's why Sigma males disappear during transformation. Not to hide weakness, but to protect the evolution until it's too powerful to be ignored. In a world addicted to exposure, where people spill their thoughts, emotions, and intentions like confetti for attention, the Sigma male moves differently. His privacy isn't a glitch, it's the design. Every silence is calculated. Every boundary is intentional. He doesn't hide because he's broken. He hides because he's building, sharpening his mind, protecting his power, and guarding the evolution the world isn't ready for. He knows that openness often invites manipulation. That premature vulnerability gets twisted. That shallow minds can't swim in deep waters without drowning. So instead of broadcasting his journey, he encodes it into his actions, his choices, and his results. His life becomes his voice. His discipline becomes his defense. And his silence? That becomes the most unnerving part of him, because it holds the power most people never see coming. Sigma males aren't mysterious by accident. They're private by strategy. They're not avoiding connection. They're filtering for depth. They're not silent because they lack emotion. They're silent because they've mastered how to feel without bleeding in public. Every wall they've built wasn't out of fear. It was forged through experience, betrayal, and the realization that not everyone deserves access. So if you've ever wondered what a Sigma male is hiding, understand this. He's not hiding weakness. He's hiding strength that's still loading, power that's still forming, and truth that, if revealed too soon, would either be misunderstood or misused. Thank you for watching. If you found value in this breakdown of the Sigma male's mind and privacy, don't forget to like, comment, and share with others who need to hear this. And if you're not already part of this tribe, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop something real, raw, and unapologetically honest. Until next time, stay sharp and stay dangerous. If this spoke to you, if it peeled back the layers and revealed truths you've always felt but never heard out loud, then don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that goes beyond surface-level noise. Like the video to let us know this message resonated. Drop a comment and share your perspective. We read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Wake them up. This isn't just content. This is a signal for those who think deeper, move smarter, and live quieter. Subscribe, like, comment, share. And remember, real power never shouts. It moves in silence.